we'll straighten it all up and stuff. I want to show you this and talk about this too. That's new.
FOS. FOS?
That's the political organization name on there.
Okay.
Alright, let's zoom out a little bit. Alright, everyone.
You already?
This is our YouTube, yeah, that's us right there. It's our YouTube family out here. Hope MySpace people don't get upset at us. Alright. So, and I'm going to edit out the parts we don't like. But this is coming to you live from 103rd and Halsted in Chicago. I'm your host, Cy Smith, and I'm standing here. I'm sitting here with a wonderful lady who I met about 2 years ago, Stephanie Rose. And this here lady has transformed, but I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. I love her spirit and everything. Just look at the camera and introduce yourself to our fans.
Good afternoon. My name is Stephanie Spalding, and
Not Rose?
My middle name is Rose.
Oh, okay. Well, see, I was close. Stephanie Rose Spalding. Yep.
My poetry name is Rose, but my administrative Dr. Spalding. That's
SS.
Me. Right.
I'm SS too, Cyrus Smith.
Right. So I had to.
Chicago. What would you say? Are black people in better shape or worse shape than the civil rights movement in Chicago?
I would say we have access to a number of different things collectively as a group, but I believe that the unspoken and implied racism is much more problematic than being able to identify and
overtly
exactly overt racism and to deal with it head on, which is why we're seeing a rebirth almost, of overt racist acts like with the Gen-6 and the noose hangings all throughout the country. But
what about the police though? Because they doing some overt stuff too now.
Absolutely. So systematically, I don't think that there's been a drastic change in the place or the role of African Americans, and not just African Americans, but minorities throughout the nation since the Civil Rights Act. Even though we now have quote unquote access to a number of different things that we didn't have access before.
But would you say, because my personal thoughts is that the churches and the black leadership in this city is selling us out, and that's part of the problem. What would you say? You agree, disagree with that?
Well, I think what happens when you desegregate, we have this. What happened with African American communities is we began to buy into the idea that white is better or white is right. And with the desegregation, we turned away from an internal infrastructure in the black community where you were forced to depend on, forced to rely. Exactly, forced to interact. And we also took on that notion of white flight. Those individuals who were professionals, those who had resources, moved out of the community because of a number of different things. And so you have now where it's a class issue even inside the black community. So
now some of the suburbs, where the blacks who have made it, where have they fled to? What are some of the suburbs? Name some of them.
Well, you have
and I believe in naming that. Richton, is that affluent or no?
It is.
Harvey?
You have a lot. Harvey, not so much, but you have.
I wanted her to say that.
You have a lot that have fled to Country Club Hills areas. Even you have African Americans moving out to Oak Park, Oak Lawn, Tinley Park, those areas.
Now, what should we say to our people that when you look at Woodlawn, they just found a 21-year-old girl who's missing, strangled, burned, and in the dumpster, and you go in that community and there's no, I ain't gonna say no, very limited amount of professional people, that most of the people on welfare are really economically challenged, and then the people who made it fled out to Flossmoor and these other areas. What do you say to the people who made it and left?
That the problem doesn't go away because it continues to travel, and even,
but they're safe out there though. So
well,
I mean,
supposedly, because there are a number of undocumented crimes that occur even in those areas, and then you have to use the resources of the city. A number of them come into the city to work, so even in coming into the city, you become that much more of a threat or a risk
so, in that community.
Exactly.
You know, I work downtown, and literally every day I see the people who are the professional people, the accountants, the lawyers. Literally at 5 o'clock, everyone is like an exodus. Everyone is going to the Metro train.
Yes.
And the Metro train, just is the opposite of the CTA, which is Chicago Transit.
And they're not having as many budget crisis problems.
But let's talk about the color. Who's getting on the Metro and who's getting on the CTA?
I don't think it's so much a color issue
That's
anymore.
what I see. I kid you not. I'm seeing
because
the white flight. I see it at 5 o'clock every time.
Well, I don't work downtown, and I could agree that there are probably a number of whites, or a majority of whites that utilize the Metro. But even in that class situation, you have a number of blacks who have fled the city, who utilize the Metro. Even at one point, I had an uncle tell me when I did work downtown that for me to ride the red line was ridiculous because you're you're working on a PhD, and once they find that out that you're not in the same bracket or category, that you're at a risk, that you're at a threat.
I agree with him a little bit because I worked down there and I parked. I rode the red line. I parked on the side, got on the red line. I had my car broken into twice. The window busted out for no reason. Didn't take anything. And then I had a limousine donated from a Navy guy up from the Great Lakes. And he stole the limousine right along the red line. So I agree with you. Sometimes you just don't want to be in that atmosphere at all because of the people that you have to interact with. So your uncle was, I understand his pain.
He was just looking out for me.
Yeah, especially women. So we want to talk about the whole sexual assault type stuff that goes on.
But that doesn't happen on the Metro? It doesn't happen as much. I will give you that it does not happen as much.
We had an incident on the blue line where a guy, it was 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning, he went and groped the woman, because they were the only ones on the train. So I
think the Metro derails more often.
But do you have to have a derailment where everyone is affected, or you want to be trapped on the train with some lunatic and he's sexually assaulting you? I'd rather the whole group,
We're editing that out, right?
Which part? No, I'm serious. Oh yeah, well, no, we could. She wants that out. Let's go political.